Welcome to the Get in the Fight podcast. My name is Nate Whitson, and I'm the founder of Get in the Fight Ministries and our exclusive online fight club for Christian men. Everything we do here is dedicated to helping Christian men become the men that God meant for them to be. So if you're looking for helpful content and conversations that can help you to grow and become the man that God made you to be, then you're in the right place. But before we get started, please do me a huge favor and be sure to subscribe, click the like button, and then leave us a 5-star review. Doing that helps us to reach more men who are looking for content just like this. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our mission and how to get involved or how to join the Fight Club, then head on over to getinthefight.club. That's getinthefight.club and learn more today. But without further ado, it's time to get in the fight. So let's go. Hey guys, welcome to the Get in the Fight podcast. I'm your host, Nate Whitson. Thanks for joining me today. This is a Christian podcast for Christian men and those who are trying to pursue the life of Christ. We're trying to become better men, men made in his image, men on a mission, like he was on a mission, like he is on a mission still today, and like our lives matter to that mission. So we are husbands, we're followers of Jesus, we're men who are trying to get it right, trying to live the abundant life that Christ came for us to live, and we're pursuing that in a community called the Fight Club. Again, if it's something that you're looking for, if there's a community, a brotherhood, a place to gather that you're looking for to be encouraged, to help you, to strengthen you in your walk with Christ, check out getinthefight.club. That's getinthefight.club, not .com. And just learn more today. You can check it out. You can join for free. There's some tabs at the very top and throughout that says join. You simply fill out an application. You and I would meet one-on-one in a video setting to chat, get to know each other for 15, 20 minutes, and just kind of share with you the vision and mission of Get in the Fight in our Fight Club. So it's private. It's just for Christian men. If you're interested, check that out at getinthefight.club. We'd love to have you. But this you're probably listening to maybe on the YouTube channel. If so, would you do me a big favor and simply click the like button and subscribe? And that really helps when you comment, when you like it, and then when you share it with a friend. So I think that today's conversation is going to be one that will strike a chord with you. I know it certainly, as I go through my notes, as I look at this, I really feel like this is a big problem in my life. It's a problem potentially in yours. And so if you feel like this is a helpful conversation, do me a favor and share it with somebody else. We appreciate that a lot. So jumping into today's conversation, we're going to discover the problem with pride. You know, we all know what pride is. We all know, I think, that pride is a problem. We know that it's not good. But what I hope happens today is that we can clearly see and understand this one really big truth. And I'm going to say this throughout here, but it's this. Pride is always present when destruction shows up. Pride is always present when destruction shows up. So let's jump into that conversation with that in mind today. I'm going to be very transparent with you, very open with you about myself in trying to help you to see this issue of pride and how subtle it can be. And the thing that I want you to know is that I love being loved. I need to be loved. I'm the kind of guy that really thrives off of people telling me that I've done a good job, that they love me, that they're proud of me. You can't speak enough words into my life to let me know that you love me, that you're proud of me, that you think highly of me, any of those kinds of things. And here's the problem in saying that. This need, this felt need to be loved like that, to have people express those things to me, what it can do and what it's done in my life, being very transparent here with you, is that it can keep me from being real with people. It can keep me from showing what's really under the hood. It can keep people at a little bit of an arm's distance from me, even though if you were to meet me in real life, you would probably see I'm pretty gregarious. I'm a hugger. I'm a people person. But underneath the surface, there's a different layer, maybe I would say, of me. And again, I'm trying to let you in on that very, very authentically here today. This need to be loved means that there's times I keep parts of me, some of the real parts of me, away from you because I don't want to be exposed. I don't want people to see some of those things. And so I present, or I have the hope to present myself in a way that looks good, right? And so hopefully even just in that little introduction, you can kind of see like, whoa, there's some issues here. Pride is a problem. Pride is always present when destruction shows up. So let me introduce this verse. We're going to kind of like break this verse down in today's conversation. And so I'm going to introduce it here and then we'll kind of come back to it, okay? James chapter 1, verse 14 and 15, I'm sure is familiar to most of you. But here's what it says. But each person is tempted when they're dragged away by their own evil desires and enticed. Then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death. James 1, 14 and 15. So let me continue just to kind of peel back the curtain a little bit on me. Let me let you in, I guess I should say, into like kind of the inner chamber of what makes me me. Okay. So I'm a big fan of psychology. I love psychology. I love personality tests in particular. Things like the DISC or, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram. There's lots of them. There's probably more than that too. But those might be ones that you've heard of. Those personality tests to me are really cool because it gives me language to better understand what's happening, within my own thoughts and within my own heart. But I think it also helps me to better understand other people as well. It gives language to, like, when I see something happening in them, I can say, oh, okay, I understand that this is kind of how some of their wiring is. This is kind of how their personality is developed, right? And so for me, and then for how I participate or share in other people's lives, it helps me to understand and give language to them as well. So like with the Enneagram, if you're familiar with that at all, just using that one here for today. In the Enneagram, I am a 3 wing 2. That's kind of how I test out 3 wing 2. Now that might mean nothing to you if you're not into those or haven't, looked at Enneagram in a while. So I wrote down some things here that I think will help you to understand what is a 3 wing 2 personality like me, look like. What is this all about? Here's some things I wrote down. The 3 wing 2 is called the charmer or the helper. Now I'm going to pause real quick. Those of you that know me are going to laugh, probably. You're going to shake your head and be like, oh yeah, this is definitely Nate, right? I'm guessing that. So if you don't know me at all, again, you won't know anything about this, but this is who I am. The charmer or the helper. The 3 wing 2 personality is somebody who's caring, supportive, and focused on the needs of others. He's somebody who wants to be seen as indispensable. He's somebody who needs to feel appreciated. A 3 wing 2 thrives on recognition, praise, and success. Somebody like this needs to be appreciated and acknowledged for his helpfulness. He's highly concerned about how he's perceived by others. This kind of personality tries to craft an image of himself as successful, generous, and caring. A 3 wing 2 wants to be seen as excellent at whatever they do, and this matters greatly to him. A 3 wing 2 wants to exceed expectations, and the greatest fear of this person is rejection, failure, and humiliation. I don't even know how to let you in any further into the inner workings of my life than to read a list like that and kind of share with you how true and how real that is for me. I love to help, but maybe there's something on the other side of help. I love to be supportive and caring, and it's genuine and it's true, but there's a slippery slope with a personality like mine here. I want to be seen as indispensable. I told you early on, like, I need this kind of, it feels like a felt need. Like, I need to feel appreciated. I get hurt when it feels like somebody's maybe withholding a good job or an attaboy or I see you kind of thing. Like, there's something about being appreciated and acknowledged that's like so important to me, right? I'm very perceptive of how people look at me or respond to me or how I think they are thinking about me or, how I perceive them to be reading me or diagnosing me, right? This idea of crafting an image as somebody who's successful, who's generous and caring, like, holy smokes, like, I don't think I'm trying to do these things, but when I read these, I'm telling you, it's like this thing nails me. And this is why, again, I love personality tests because it's so revealing It's giving language to things inside of me that I know are true. And again, I wish I could like help you to understand like how true these things are of me. My greatest fears, rejection, failure, and public humiliation, I cannot tell you how true that is. So, in understanding a little bit about me in this, here's some dangers about pride and being this kind of personality. When all of those things are true of me, it means that pride can keep me from being real because I'm afraid of rejection. I'm afraid of maybe not even failing always, but being even seen as a failure is a big deal to me. Pride can keep me from being real because if I get publicly humiliated, right? And that might mean something like, you're out with your friends and somebody like digs at you and like is even if they're just teasing, but there's a little bit of truth in it, something like that can just stick in my head forever and ever. It feels worse to me than maybe it might to somebody else who just kind of like, brush it off your shoulder because a personality like mine is really afraid of public perception being bad, right? We work really hard at trying to create recognition and praise and success because we don't want to be seen as a failure, right? Pride is deeply involved in a personality like mine. I don't want to be seen as weak. I don't want to be seen as a failure. Pride can, make me run from things that I'm afraid might expose me. If it might cause me to feel hurt, if it might be difficult, if it might make me, potentially feel rejected by a relationship or a person, if I think somebody's going to laugh at me, not like in a fun way, but like they're laughing at me and looking down on me, I might just run from that situation and story. I get defensive easily. My whole life, I can look back at story after story where people are like, dude, just relax. I'm just trying to give you some helpful criticism or whatever, right? But I get so defensive, especially if somebody comes at me again publicly or like in a group of friends or something like that. Pride is very, very pronounced for me because, again, I can kind of read the room really well. I'm very perceptive to my own feelings and I'm perceptive then of others as well. Kind of a gift of discernment, I would say I have. And so, again, if I feel like there's criticism even buried in it, man, that can be hard for me and I can get defensive really easy. Pride keeps me from, being me because I want to look good on the outside to others. I want to look successful. My self-worth is often tied to performance and to winning, and it's like, man, what would happen if I look like a failure to people? Because again, not consciously, but subconsciously, I'm always working to make sure I have an image that I like others to see. Can you see then how dangerous and subtle that pride can be? Pride is always present when destruction shows up. Going back to James 1, listen to this portion. But each person is tempted when they're dragged away by their own evil desires and enticed. So staying to just like on me in order to not make this about me, but to really just be vulnerable, hoping that you will do the same. Like, here's what I'm tempted by pride with. I'm tempted by pride to present myself to you and to others as successful at whatever I do. I'm tempted to create an image that I'm very well put together, that I'm wise, and that I'm strong. I'm tempted by pride to show you enough of me that's very real, but maybe I don't show you everything. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to be open. I'm going to be honest, but I might hide the ugliest stuff from people. Pride tempts me to craft an image that I want you to see. It tempts me to think that people will not like me unless I'm caring, supportive, serving, leading, or something else. Like, would they like the real me if I didn't do any of those things, if I didn't perform well, if I wasn't whatever they see, whatever I've crafted? I question that, at a core question. I'm tempted to sometimes serve and to use my gifting in order to be praised for it. There are times where I've had this conversation with our worship team leader where she will give lots of praise. And at times I'm like, yeah, but I don't get enough of it. And I've had to talk to her and just be like, man, I feel like such a fool and she does a great job with this. I know she won't listen to this, but like, it's just, again, trying to be honest with you that I play guitar on the worship team. And sometimes I think, again, people can look at me and go, well, this guy's like very confident. He's very secure. He wouldn't need some of that. And deep inside, I'm serving and doing these things, not because I don't want to, not because it's just like I'm purposefully looking for it, but subconsciously, man, if somebody like withholds thankfulness or like attaboys, again, I can just be like, man, I need that. And then I can just feel this problem of pride rising up and be like, man, what is wrong with me? Like, what is it that makes me be like this? Right. And maybe that's a different level of this conversation, but this is what happens inside of me so often. Pride tempts me, like James talks about. Each person's tempted when they're dragged away by their own evil desires. Well, pride tempts me to think that I can do life, using my own abilities, my own strengths, my own skills. And it tempts me into thinking that I can do all of those things, present the image I want, not necessarily be completely real or honest, and that I'll be okay with that. And I won't. Right? Why? Because pride is always present when destruction shows up. Pride tempts me into avoiding anything that might cause me public humiliation or shame. So some of those things are just, I'm tempted by all the time, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm tempted by those things all the time. And never is it like, again, this conscious, like straight up thought. But man, like as I think through this and as I've, practiced and thought through this conversation, I just can't tell you like how honest I'm trying to be with this, that these are real parts of me that I struggle with. I don't know how it all develops necessarily. And we can get into some of that probably in my history and my background and all that kind of things. But no matter what that is, I recognize that I am tempted and dragged away by my own evil desires, and I'm enticed by these things that I'm telling you about, right? Here's the second part of that verse. James 1:14 and 15 again. Then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death. So like when pride wins in my life, when pride wins in your life, pride brings destruction. Pride, when it gets full grown, gives birth to death. Here's the question, like how? How does that bring death? Well, I lose what's true about what God says and thinks about me. I'm so concerned on this other side of the ledger at wanting other people's approval, wanting other people to say, man, you do such a great job. Wow. You're so caring. You're so good at this. You're so whatever. I want that so much that what would happen to me if I didn't have it? What would happen if nobody tells me that? Would I be okay with what God says? Would I be okay with just privately, secretly doing these things? Would I just try to do it all for the Lord's pleasure first and only? I lose what's true about what God says about me, that I'm chosen, that I'm loved, that I'm secure in Him, all these things. I lose that when pride comes into my life and it brings death. Why? Because my desires bring the hurt and the pain with everything that I try to avoid and everything that I'm afraid of and avoid in my life. It only creates more problems, right? So what about you? As I transition from me to you, what about you? Where does pride show up in your life? I think, again, many of us men would acknowledge that pride is bad, but I don't know that many of us know how to pinpoint it in their lives. And again, if that's you, then maybe some of these, personality tests like the Enneagram and things like that can be helpful. Not everybody likes it. I get it. It's okay if you don't. But for me, that's been a part of that journey of like getting deeper inside of my own mind and life and like just digging up what's true. I want to know more about me so I can be more proactive in like demolishing those strongholds, getting rid of those things that I'm tempted by and really addressing them, right? So for me, I feel like those things are helpful. And if it's you and you're not sure how to pinpoint it, then I want to give you some questions here that I wrote down that I think could be helpful to you. And this may be one of those things where it's a lot of questions. I'm just going to go through them really quickly. But it may be one of those things that if you say, I don't really know if I deal with pride, I want you to listen to these questions. Maybe you'll need to come back to this podcast at some point. Maybe you'll need to pause it. Like for the guy that really wants to deal with this, if you recognize that pride is always present in your life when destruction shows up and you really want to deal with this, pause this, write these questions down, come back to them, re-listen to it, whatever you need to do. Okay. But if you're serious about rooting out pride in your life, ask yourself some of these questions. What are your real motivations to do the things that you do? What are the real motivations, right? Like how much is pride involved, as I was kind of sharing with you where it comes into my life? How much are you serving? And there's actually the real motivation is the attaboy, all these kinds of things. What are the real motivations of your heart for the things that you do for your family, for your wife, for yourself? How much of it's pride driven? How do you feel if people don't recognize all the things that you do for them? Do you struggle with that like I struggle with that? Like, hey, look at me over here. I'm even, by the way, with that one, I'm such a broken dude that like I will, it seems like tell my wife like, hey, just so you know, I did this, this, and this today. Like, what is up with that? Do you ever do that? Maybe it's just me, right? If it's not just me, would you tell me so I don't feel like such a loser all alone? But I'm that kind of guy. I want to make sure people know I'm serving you today. I'm helping you. Here's what I did, right? Instead of just doing it, this is a struggle. How about this question? How defensive do you get when confronted, challenged, or criticized? How defensive do you get? When somebody confronts you with something, are you like me and your face turns red and you get kind of like, you feel like you're being backed into a corner? You feel like you're being challenged when they're really just trying to have a conversation with you? Or maybe they are criticizing you. Are you able to take that on like a man? Are you able to deal with that? Or do you just like shut down, right? Like, I can't take it. I can't handle it. I'm not strong enough. I'm not emotionally strong enough to deal with that, right? How much is pride involved in the defensiveness that you feel? How about this? Is your sense of self-worth connected to what you do or what you achieve? Do you feel envious or jealous when others do well in the areas that you want to do well at? Do you find yourself comparing yourself to others a lot? When you do talk to others, do you constantly bring the stories that they share back to you? And then you jump in and say, yeah, me too. And then you just tell your story and you kind of take over. You ever around somebody like that? Somebody says like, oh man, I used to do this thing in basketball. They're like, oh, I did too, but I actually did 3 more of those than you did, or whatever it is. Even if it's not like jumping on it and saying they did more, it's like they can't just let somebody else talk about themselves. They've got to make sure that they always bring themselves into that story. Do you know what I mean? Like, is that anything that you deal with when you talk to others? Do you constantly make it about you? How about this one? How often do you find yourself making sure that you know all the things that you do, making sure that others know all the things that you do to help or to serve? Are you okay with doing good even if nobody knew it or noticed it or said thank you for it? Are you driven by a sense of perfectionism? Do you hide your flaws and mistakes and worry about what others might think or say? Are you ultra competitive and always feeling like you have to win at everything? Do you struggle with self-awareness and identifying your feelings? Are you critical of others? Do you often admit when you're wrong? Are you a good listener? And how do you handle praise? Like just thinking through those things. You know why I wrote those questions? Because they're questions that I have to ask myself. And honestly, I deal with a lot of those. I have a problem with pride. And you know what? I've found that pride is always present when destruction shows up. And maybe you have too. So what do we do, right? Like if you go through those questions, if you're listening to this today and you're like, man, that is me, dude. Like that is my story. I deal with this, right? Not all of you will, by the way, or we all might maybe at very different, kind of extremes. But if this is you and you know that there's pride buried in your life and you're pinpointing it and you're going back through those questions and you're really like saying, okay, look, well, now what? Like I want to deal with this. I want to root this out. I want to, deal with this before the destruction shows up. What can you do? How do you be a better man at dealing with pride? And that's what this podcast and this ministry is about. couple things, starting with this, Hebrews 12, verse 2. We look to Jesus, the author, the perfecter of our faith. That's the answer, ultimately. We look to Jesus. Jesus is God, and yet Jesus became human. Think about that. Think about like the humility of the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, God Almighty, coming and becoming a human in a broken body like the one that we have. How incredible is that? Born in a manger, raised in the dirt, all of these things. He is God, and yet he became human. And we look to Jesus. How do we be better at dealing with pride? We look to the one who taught us how to live, right? We turn to Jesus. How about this one? In Mark 10, verse 45, we see that Jesus said, I didn't come to be served. I came to serve, and he came to die. Think about this. This is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. His example, when we look to him, like, how do I better learn to deal with pride? I become a servant. I look to him. What did he do? He served. He died. He put his needs aside, and he said, I'm going to serve others. We think about like, one of the habits and goals and, things that we talk about a lot here is that like we are you first people. Like we're a leadership. We're trying to be men of leadership who like say you before me, right? You first. Why do we do that? Because Jesus did that. He is the one that we look to when we're dealing with pride. How about this one? John 13, 1 through 17. We're not going to read all the verses, but in this section, we see that Jesus washed dirty feet. He served. Again, we see the example that he set here before he goes to the cross. He leaves us this example, and he not only serves and washes the dirty feet of those who were closest to him and loved him dearly, but he washes the feet of his betrayer, and he washes the feet of you and me who have also betrayed him and let him down 1 billion times, and he still is crazy about us, right? How do you deal with pride? How do you change your heart? How do you become more like him? We look to Jesus who washed our feet, who washes our feet. He continues to serve us, and he continues to give us this example through his word. Last one here. How do we deal with pride? Philippians 2, verse 8. He humbled himself, and he willingly went to the cross. He humbled himself. So 2 things here. How do we get better as men at dealing with pride? We look to Jesus, number 1. And then number 2, we learn to kill pride. Instead of pride bringing death to us, we have to learn how to kill pride instead. 3 quick thoughts. Number 1, learn to recognize pride. That's what I hope happens in today's conversation. I hope it helps you to recognize some of these things. Recognize when pride is showing up. Get very clear about what's happening inside of you. And if that means having to use some personality tests, then do that. But it ultimately is always about connecting it to Jesus, to his word, to staying plugged into that, to being a part of communities like ours where you're being challenged by that. Be clear about the pride that is inside of you. Recognize it, number 1. Number 2, I just said restrict it. Recognize it first and then restrict it. 1 Peter 5:5 says to clothe yourself with humility every single day. How do you restrict pride? You clothe yourself with humility. Where does that example come from? Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. Over and over and over, we see that he clothed himself with humility. How do you restrict pride? You clothe it with humility. You restrict it from killing you, and you kill it instead, right? And number 3 is you reject it. You reject it with the truth. What does the truth do? The truth will set you free. The truth rejects the lies, right? The truth is what exposes what's happening, and all those things that we talked about today, all of those things that are happening inside of your heart and mind that are causing pride to bring destruction and pain. It's refusing to let you become the man that God meant for you to be. You reject that with the truth, right? Number 1, we recognize it. We recognize what's happening. We recognize where pride is showing up. We restrict it through the word of God and through humility every day. We clothe ourselves in that, and then we reject it. I recognize it. I see it. I restrict it through God's word, and then I say no to it. I reject the lies, and I embrace the truth. This is how we become better men at dealing with pride. Here's the thing, as we wrap up here, pride is always present when destruction shows up. Humility, then, is the pathway to the life that you've always wanted. How do we know? Because Christ demonstrated it for us. We look to Jesus, and we kill pride at every turn because pride is always present when destruction shows up. If you want to live the abundant life that Christ died for you to live, he's showing us the way. How? He is the way. He's the truth. He is the life. If you want to be the man that God meant for you to be, he's shown you how through Jesus, and it is a path of humility. This is a fight, isn't it? Like when you think through these things, you're going to answer those questions. What are your real motivations? How do you deal with criticism? How do you deal when somebody challenges you? Like, are you okay with doing good, even if you're not noticed? All those things. Go back and listen to this and write these things down and deal with it. When you deal with pride, you're going to be in a fight. And that's what we call this. That's why we name this what this is, like get in the fight. This is a fight against pride. This is a fight for the abundant life. Pride fools you, and you think that you're protecting yourself. You think that you're better this way, but you're not. Christ shows us the way, and it's a path of humility. And so my challenge to you is that you would get in the fight. There's a problem with pride, and we must kill it every single day through humility. All right? So that's it for today. Thanks for listening. Again, if this is a podcast that's helpful to you, would you like it, comment on it, and maybe just share it with somebody? Maybe if you'll just, copy the URL and text it to a friend and be like, hey, you got to hear this one. This is a good one, or whatever like that. It makes a big difference. It helps us to get in front of more men. So that's it for today. Get in the fight, fight against pride, live the life of Christ, and we'll see you soon. Hey guys, thanks so much for being here today and listening to the show. Please be sure to head over to the website at getinthefight.club. And before you go, if you haven't already, please subscribe, click the like button, and leave us a positive 5-star review. It makes a huge difference whenever you do. Have a great day. Go get in the fight.